Hello, fellow reader. Join me, I am your host, Sansi. Dive into the world of magic and explore the most stories full of wonder, fantastical delights. Open your eyes and see the parade come to life. Sansi's parade, Sansi's parade. Join the parade, Sansi's parade, parade. Sansi's parade, Sansi's parade. Join the parade, Sansi's parade.
Chapter 16. Dracula closed in on Van Helsing. WHO looked back at the clock tower and watched as the big minute hand slammed forward. It was exactly 1 minute to midnight. The clock chimed and everything changed. 1, he said. Dracula looked confused. Van Helsing started to shake as raw power seemed to flood into him from all sides, as well as from inside. A red mist descended over his eyes and he sensed something within him swelling. At first small but powerful, then large and overwhelming. Suddenly it seemed as if his skin could no longer contain him and he felt himself expanding, shedding something unimportant as he grew in power and rage. He was transforming, and although he tried to hang on to something of the man he had been and tried to remember Anna and Cal, he soon found that he could not even recollect their faces in his mind's eye. Only one thing mattered now, Dracula. His enemy. He felt his muscles throbbing with power and a lust for blood, the blood of the monster before him. Dracula looked stunned. No. This is not right, he uttered. Then he was angry. This cannot be. Something else showed in Dracula's eyes, fear. That was good. His enemy feared him. His enemy feared the wolf. Anna looked at Cal, who was stuck where he was, with no place to go but down into the void. To save Van Helsing, Carl would have to somehow get across the gap with the antidote. Looking around, Anna saw the wire that was hanging nearby, the same one that Frankenstein had used to smash his way into the room. It was crazy, ridiculous, and dangerous, and the only chance they had. Leaping out from the relative safety of the wall, she grabbed the wire, which hissed and sparked in her hands. Hanging on for dear life, she swung down across the face of the castle as the clock chimed again. 2, she remarked as she sailed through space. His enemy backed away from him, rightly wary of his power as the wolf. He felt indestructible, he was running with the moon now. With a predator's growl, he took a single step forward. For the first time in 400 years, Dracula took a corresponding step backward in retreat. You and I are part of the same grand game, Gabriel, the vampire said. Gabriel. Gabriel, the wolf thought. The name held meaning for him. Then he remembered, it was his human name. It had been his name when a man was all he was. But not anymore. Now he was the wolf. His enemy continued to back away, and the wolf's predator instinct told him that Dracula was trying to buy time. But we need not find ourselves on opposite sides of the board, the vampire cajoled. The clock chimed 3 as Anna swung toward the bottom of her arc, just above Carl. The friar stepped to the edge of the bridge and held the syringe in his hand. 3. He called. 2 things happened at once. Anna spotted another cable and released the one she held, while Carl simultaneously threw the syringe. Hurtling through space and grasping the second wire, Anna held out her other hand as the syringe flew toward her. She didn't miss. Antidote in hand, she began to arc up toward the other tower, toward the laboratory and Van Helsing. She was coming for him. The wolf lunged at his enemy, who assumed his winged form and flew up the wall, heading for the open skylight. The wolf recognized prey that was running in fear and bounded after it, using his claws to climb the sheer wall. Before the bat creature could reach the opening and escape into the night, the wolf leapt out and grabbed his enemy, and they fell to the floor below, crashing through the machines that lay there. Explosions. Fire and sparks everywhere. The wolf howled in exhilaration. As the clock tower chimed for the fourth time, Anna knew she was close as she sailed up to the laboratory tower. She had to time her jump just right, or she would either sail past the tower and fall to her death, or slam into its side. She saw a flash of white flitting through the gloom. Alara! Not now! Her mind screamed. She held fast to the wire and then watched Alara slice it from above with a swipe of her claw. Anna's momentum kept her flying through the air. She twisted her body, trying to reach out with her hands, to grab onto something, anything. She prayed for help, and to her amazement she hit a ledge on the side of the castle wall. Incredibly, she didn't fall. The ledge held and she was still in one piece. Anna began to pull herself up. Dracula was in human form again. The vampire was trying to confuse him, but the wolf kept his focus. He had not only the instincts of the wolf but its animal cunning and something else left from the man he used to be. He remembered that this was the enemy of the whole world, a world which it was his job to protect. Dracula was his assignment. "You're being used, Gabriel." "As was I, but I escaped, and so can you," the enemy hissed. The wolf had heard enough. He flung himself at the enemy, who changed again, becoming the winged beast once more and using its sharp hands and feet to tear at the wolf. As the claws struck him, cutting into his hide, the wolf howled in pain, pain that brought the world into focus, and fueled his rage. As he slashed at the bat creature, the wolf reveled in its shrieks. The enemy threw itself up into the air and into the rafters, where it became a man again. The enemy was injured. The wolf was pleased to see, his arm torn and limp at his side. If the enemy could be hurt, he could also be killed. "I know who you are, who controls you. Join me. Join me and I'll cut the strings that play you. I'll give you your life back," the enemy said, and the clock chimed again. The wolf paused for a moment, resisting the urge to kill. The enemy was offering him something that had once been important. The enemy was offering him his life. But that was before he started running with the moon, before its power ran through his body. The wolf wanted only one thing now, to kill its enemy. That thought pushed all others aside. Just as Anna pulled herself up onto the ledge, Alara landed next to her. Springing to her feet, the princess began backing up on the narrow shelf as Alara closed in. A quick look behind her told Anna that the ledge ended after only a few steps. This could be a very short and one-sided fight. The wolf felt the hunger for victory, the hunger for the blood of his enemy. He bounded to the wall and climbed it, grabbing Dracula and bringing him down to the floor. Dracula was struggling desperately, pulling away from him. "Don't you understand? 400 years ago we were friends. Partners. Brothers." The clock chimed. That was important, the wolf knew. It meant he did not have much time to finish his enemy. Dracula changed into the bat creature again and tried to take flight, but he was too injured. There would be no more waiting. The wolf was on him, putting his claws around his enemy's throat. Very close now. He felt the power of the moon and soon he would have his victory. And then his strength began to fade. The wolf looked over one shoulder out a window to see clouds begin to creep in front of the moon. Fading. Gone. Van Helsing found himself with his hands wrapped around the bat creature's throat. The wolf was no more and he was just a man again. Then his training took over and he assessed the situation. He was a human facing perhaps the most powerful supernatural being ever to walk the earth. Dracula had been hurt in the battle against him, but he was still more than a match for an ordinary man. Staggering backward, Van Helsing saw the creature Dracula had become look out the window at the roiling clouds that were now obscuring the moon. Then it turned to Van Helsing. A confident glint filled the winged beast's eyes. "Did I mention that it was you who murdered me?" Dracula said. Anna heard the clock chime again, but there was nowhere for her to go. The castle wall was at her back, the pit was on either side, and the demon was facing her. Alara stepped in for the kill and said, "Your blood shall make me even more beautiful." What do you think of that? There was a flash of light and something pierced Taylor's chest. It had flown through the air and impaled the vampire, a silver stake. Carl. Anna looked over at the bridge. Carl had crawled into the gap in the bridge and was hanging between two girders. The friar was still trying to reach the laboratory, and risking his life to do so. Looking back at Taylor, Anna saw the vampire staring at her in surprise and horror. Already she was starting to change. The vampire's skin started to bubble and run, rotting even as it turned to slime. I think if you're going to kill somebody, kill them. Don't stand around talking about it, Anna said. Aylara gurgled something unintelligible and burst in front of her, lumps of putrefied gore flying in all directions. Anna saw the silver stake flash through the air, propelled by the explosion, and embedded itself in a beam less than a foot from Carl's head. The clock chimed once more. Carl looked up at it and cried, "How many is that? How many is that?" Anna was already racing across the ledge and onto the parapet walkway that ringed the tower. 8, Anna called out, laying on speed. Just 4 left. Van Helsing backed away from Dracula, moving through the flaming, sparking equipment as the vampire took human form and slowly closed in on him. The Count's right hand was still limp at his side, but his left seemed to be fine. "All I wanted was life, Gabriel. Now I'll have to take yours," Dracula said. The Count held up his left hand, revealing that his ring finger was missing. It looked as if it had been cut off long ago. "And I'll take my ring back as well," Dracula said. Reflexively, Van Helsing felt for the band on his own left hand. There was still so much that he did not understand. Who was he? How had he and Dracula been connected? How was it that he had memories from so long ago? The clock tower chimed again. No time for answers. Van Helsing felt the wall behind him. He was trapped. The vampire's teeth grew into long fangs. "Don't be afraid, Gabriel. Now I will give you back your life, your memory," Dracula said. Looking around desperately, Van Helsing caught sight of the moon outside. The clouds were just clearing and Van Helsing felt the power surge within him again. The transformation was much faster than before. He was the wolf once more. Lunging for the enemy, he grabbed Dracula with his hands, chomping down on the vampire's throat. His teeth tore through flesh and sinew, finally meeting tasting blood as Dracula cried out in agony. The wolf stepped back and watched Dracula start to shrivel before his eyes, shrinking and decaying. The great monster, the enemy to all, was disappearing before his eyes. The vampire fought, tried to resist, but there were laws that were greater than even his unearthly power could challenge. He had been strong in life, and even stronger in death, but he had risen from dust, and to dust he would return. As the Count wasted away, his screams echoed through the castle. Soon there was no flesh, only ash, a charred husk, and soon not even that. Finally there was only black soot burned into the floor. The enemy was no more. The clock chimed again. As Anna ran up the stairs to Dracula's makeshift laboratory, she saw the smaller bats that were Dracula's children flying freely through the air. At first she was afraid they would attack her, but they seemed confused, preoccupied. They had trouble keeping themselves aloft. "That's Van Helsing," she hoped. When they started to explode, she was sure. "He's done it." She rejoiced. Somehow he's done it. She had waited her whole life for this moment. For generations, her family had thought of nothing else. Her father and brother had died for it. She should have been overjoyed, but she realized that she still had something to do, something that pushed all other thoughts aside. It wasn't over for Van Helsing. He needed her now. He needed her to come for him. Only seconds remained. Bursting through the door, she beheld the werewolf with his back to her. Holding the syringe tightly in one hand, she charged and heard the clock chime one last time. 12, she said aloud. But the werewolf was aware of Anna before she even entered the room, and spun to meet her. The curse was still upon him and the moon still held him in its grip. He pounced with a flash of fangs and claws. Anna screamed as the creature threw itself at her, hundreds of pounds of raging fury driving her back through the air. She lunged with the syringe and caught the werewolf directly in the chest. Something struck her hard from behind, and she realized that they had crashed onto a piece of furniture that had then broken beneath her. "That's not the only thing that's broken," her mind called out. She tried to get up, to push the beast off of her, but found that none of her limbs would obey her commands. The werewolf was on top of her, but he wasn't moving. He hadn't gone for the kill. Then she saw the empty syringe sticking out of his chest and realized that nothing was wrong. She had come for Van Helsing, and she hadn't failed him. Anna willed her resisting body to move again and realized that she might not be getting up from this fight, but it didn't matter. They had won. They had rid the world of Dracula's curse. The Count's children were dead, as were his brides. The man who had risked so much for them all, for her, would soon be free. Anna had been a soldier in a war. There was a price to be paid even for victory, and she would gladly pay it. Looking up, she could see that there was pain and confusion in the werewolf's eyes. Anna wanted to say something, but found that her mouth also would not obey her. It was all right. A gentle peace descended on her. The world would have a future, Van Helsing would have a future, not with her, but he would have one. Anna found comfort in her past. Papa. Mama. Vulcan. Images swirled in her mind. Memories. Good feelings. And there was a beautiful dream that had been interrupted, that she felt reclaiming her. Her instinct was to fight, but Anna resisted it this time. Her time for fighting was past. Anna let herself go and fell into the dream's embrace. When Carl ran into the room, the werewolf was on top of Anna. He skidded to a stop, not able to tell if she was alive or not, but he was sure of one thing: it was midnight and the werewolf was still here. He was too late, Van Helsing was lost. Gabriel Van Helsing had vanquished Dracula, saving humanity from the vampire's scourge. Van Helsing was a great man who had fought many battles in the service of God, and he had paid a terrible price for each victory, but none as terrible as this. He had become that which he hunted. He had become an instrument of evil, the one fear that Carl knew he had. There was nothing the friar could do to save him now, but there was something he could do to free him. Reaching into his robe, Carl pulled out a sliver stake. His hand trembled and he prayed for strength. God forgive me. Running forward, he brought it down with all of his might, aiming for the center of the werewolf's back, for the creature's heart. No, Van Helsing's heart, his mind corrected. Even as the blade plunged toward its mark, he knew that his aim was true. And then, in a movement that was almost too quick to follow, the werewolf spun around. A claw shot out and grabbed Carl's wrist, stopping the stake just short before it penetrated his hide. Carl felt a knot of fear rise up from his stomach. The beast would strike quickly now. He braced himself, and prepared to give his accounting to God. The creature twitched but did not strike. Instead, his red eyes stared at the friar, first with a blazing fury and then something else, perhaps recognition. Then the werewolf turned slightly to face him and Carl saw the syringe sticking out of his chest, empty. The werewolf released him and Carl stumbled back. Reaching for his chest, the creature ripped the syringe out and threw it away. Then he looked down at Anna. Carl did the same. She was still and her eyes were wide open. The friar's fear melted into grief, and then he saw the terrible understanding on the werewolf's face. She's dead, Carl said, scarcely believing the words himself. She had fought her entire life against the forces of darkness. In that, she had been Van Helsing's equal. Looking at the werewolf now, the friar realized that, to him, she had meant much more than that. The werewolf crouched over Anna, who even in death seemed beautiful, lying on the broken couch. Behind the creature, the arched window showed the full moon in all its glory. The beast tilted his head back and gave a terrible howl, baying mournfully at the moon. The roar seemed to go on forever. Then it began to change. The creature began to grow smaller. A few moments later Van Helsing was himself again, crying out his very human pain and anguish.